As I teased out with my last video on Bryan Lundiuke, I have even juicier things than his spurging out, making a video and insinuating that a large amount of the Linux and Foss community members are anti-Semites, and then is finally deleting it in under 24 hours after my contacting his sponsors for comment on it. Well, we are going to get into all of that stuff in this video, plus some other things I wanted to talk about in regards to Bryan and this whole situation that I didn't manage to originally. If you haven't watched the first video I did on him, I included links to it in the description. Before getting into the juicy stuff, like his admitting he was looking for people's names and calling for the doxing of people, I want to get into the things I didn't manage to originally. It just makes sense to start there first, where the video is a continuation of the first one. As I was talking about in my last video, Lunduke has been trying to nickel and dime his subscribers for every penny he possibly can, especially as of late with his overextending himself and taking on studio space. This has even led to his now using Patreon as a ghetto paywall for the overwhelming majority of his content. All of this, as you could easily guess, brought about a lot of backlash his way. He didn't expect the level of it though and only saw one way of dealing with it, disabling comments. His just disabling them wouldn't sell though with his subscribers. Neither would any run-of-the-mill story for his doing so. He needed something good that he could sell and hopefully have people buy. So Bryan went all out in his choice for a narrative on why he was disabling comments. He chose a foundation for it that is a loaded one, because if you question it, you're automatically an anti-Semite. The narrative that he chose was that his videos were being flooded with anti-Semitic comments to the point of where he couldn't handle the moderation of it. As a result of this supposedly happening, he was forced to disable comments on all of them. This brought even more backlash on top of what he was getting before doing it. That in turn led to him doubling down on and change the narrative, which he did in his deleted video. In trying to sell this bullshit harder, he chose to claim in that video that he was the target of anti-Jewish hate, supposedly being Jewish. This was after 2 tweets about all the anti-Semitic comments and no mention of it. The second of the 2 actually linked to his deleted video. One would think at least in that one he'd have mentioned something like that, being a topic of the video and the tweet was linking people to it. At least some common sense dictates that would be the case. This isn't the first time that he's played the Jew card and made claims that he is Jewish. The deleted video was the second time he has done it that I know of. The first was when he was on the radar of SJWs and being called a Nazi by them, which seemed to work on getting them to back off. Here it is showing that there's a pattern of using his supposedly being Jewish in order to try to diffuse a situation and deflect away from him.
Here we go. First and foremost, I am not a Nazi. The fact that I have to state that is ridiculous. I am a very, very proud Jewish man. I am a religiously active Jewish man, and you don't find too many proud Jewish dudes that are also Nazis or Nazi sympathizers. You just don't find that. Call it crazy, but they two just don't gel all that well together.
As you can see, he has no problem just throwing out he's supposedly Jewish when he comes under fire after watching him in that clip. That being the case, when you take a look at the bigger picture of the situation, the story of his narrative and the facts don't exactly line up. That means either the facts are lying or he is. The problem is, facts don't lie. So that leaves only him lying. If I was an SJW, I might believe otherwise. Hell, I might even believe his bullshit story that he had to disable all comments because of the anti-Jewish ones he was getting. But I'm not an SJW, and he's full of shit. When it comes to liars and their lies, there is always at least a tiny kernel of truth embedded within them. With Lunduke, it is no different.
Rule number 1, every lie is built on a kernel of truth.
This is because it is easier to build a lie off of even the tiniest bit of truth than it is to pull it completely out of your ass. Plus, sometimes it helps having a kernel of truth as part of it in order to make it easier to sell the lie to people, which is exactly the situation with Lunduke. There are certainly things I do believe from his narrative, while others I do not. I do believe that Bryan deleted over 200 comments in 24 hours. But I do not remotely believe they were all anti-Semitic. I believe that only a small portion of them were like that. I am sure that most of them were calling him out for the things that he had been doing trying to nickel and dime his subscribers. The only way his version would be true would be if his lie about the Linux and Foss community having a large number of anti-Semites in it was true, which we can safely say that is not the case. When it comes to Lunduke and the Jew card, with how he has used it in the past to shut down the SJWs who were calling him a Nazi, I believe he would try playing it to shut down his critics, even if it means lying about them in order to do so. Because if you question something he is doing with his narrative and playing the Jew card, you are automatically an anti-Semite by doing so in the eyes of some. That is incentive for people not to do it, and he knows it. I believe the whole point of his doing this in his deleted video was ultimately to stop people from questioning his supposed reasoning for disabling comments, and it makes me wonder if he's actually Jewish. In saying that, I mean a devout practicing one, if one at all. What I do believe is both him and Pocahontas Warren may have misrepresenting their ethnic heritage in common. I say this because the only time it has come up is when he uses it as something to try to silence people, like with countering the Nazi claims and with his being called out for disabling comments. For all I know, he's one and just flaunts it around when he needs it for situations like those. But I am in doubt. I am also in doubt when it comes to reasoning Lunduke gave on why alternatives to disabling comments were impractical to do. None of it makes any sense. Moderation of comments by one person, yes, that would be near impossible with any substantial number of them to go through. But not so much when you add others into the mix who are doing it as well. With a situation like this, for the most part, if you throw enough manpower at it, you'll end up solving the problem of moderating comments. With Lunduke's subscriber base and the number of comments he used to get on average, it wouldn't take that many people to moderate them, but for him, doing it would create more of a problem than it would solve. Simply put, the best conspiracy is a conspiracy of one. That is because you only have to worry about yourself and no one else exposing what you are doing. Anyone who's brought in to moderate would see the actual content and context of the comments. It is a bit hard to delete comments that are critical of you when others can see you doing it. It is even harder to get them to go along with it and even participate. In the end, the odds are that someone will end up exposing you and what you are doing. Just look at Crout & T or King of Pole for proof of that. Bryan is not stupid, and I'm sure all of this is exactly why he didn't want to bring in moderators. If he were to use keywords, his whole narrative of there being too many anti-Jewish comments on his videos, and he had to disable comments as a result, would fall apart rather quickly. This is due to how rules engines work. Using keywords on YouTube comments, in a short time he could have configured the rules engine to pretty much take care of all the anti-Jewish comments, making moderation a lot easier for him. I mean, there are only so many ways to accuse someone of being a Jew, not to mention a limited amount of ways you can type the word Jew or related terms for that matter. Of course, on occasion something might slip past, but it's easy enough to fix that by adding the words or variations of them used to get past the scrutiny of keywords. It really is that simple. Yet he had to make it sound so difficult in order to justify not doing it. I believe there was one reason for his doing it too. Moderators and keywords will not stop actual criticism. Stopping it is on the levels Lunduke claimed that trying to stop anti-Jewish comments would be for him. Actually, it is probably much harder to do it. Moderators are not going to go along with censoring people who are making valid points that Bryan doesn't like. Not to mention a rules engine is incapable of distinguishing criticism when there are no actual keywords you can use to point it out. That only left him the option of disabling comments, which is exactly what he did, and people literally found other ways to express to him their dislike of what he was doing. Without being able to comment and tell Lunduke they did not like what he was doing, they turned to using the rating system to do so. His response with how bad it was for him was to disable people rating his videos, which I have to give Bruno D'Souza Lino from Twitter credit for calling this one happening on the deleted tweet thread for Bryan's deleted video. Since you pretty much close the only source of communication with others who aren't able to support you financially, there's no point in keeping subscribed to your channel. What's next? Will you hide the ratings numbers too? When Bryan will go that far and disable people rating his videos on top of disabling comments, it really does lend credibility to my personal belief on the situation based on all the facts. Any rational person, I would bet, would come to a similar stance as I have in regards to Bryan and everything surrounding him. Having said all that, we are now moving on to the really good stuff when it comes to Bryan and his spurging out on Twitter. All of it came about because of this situation he created trying to exploit his subscribers for more money too. Someone or multiple someones must have really triggered Lunduke for him to show his true colors like he did here in tweet form. I do not necessarily believe whomever it was using anti-Semitism in what they said. If they did, Bryan would have put it front and center in his first tweet in this thread. It would be human nature to do so, especially when they are supposedly targeting you for being Jewish and it's because of them you are disabling comments. He didn't do that though. He disabled comments on his YouTube videos, made general implications, then never elaborated in his later tweets. What he did instead was to sensationalize and then make a total spurging fool of himself. Just look at the tweet that was the start of Bryan Lunduke's downward spiral. Done. Comments disabled on all YouTube videos. There has been simply too much anti-Jewish hate there, ranging from typical Jew to death to all Jews. I moderated over 200 such messages in the last 24 hours alone. I don't have any time for that hate and YouTube doesn't care. As you can see, pretty general on the note of the anti-Jewish stuff that people are supposed to be leaving in their comments. Not one mention of how he was a target of it either. He just nonchalantly talks about how he moderated 200 such messages in 24 hours and is now done with it. In none of the tweets he makes in the thread after this one does he go into anything like his being personally a target of anti-Semitism. His next tweet is about the video he deleted. I have a lot of thoughts around this. I'll record a video either tonight or tomorrow talking about it. In the meantime, I'm going to enjoy this fair-weathered Saturday and goof off with my kids. Bryan had more than just thoughts about supposed anti-Jewish comments. Seeing that people were not buying into the things he was calling for while spurging out in his tweet thread, he decided to double down on all of it instead, which wasn't the best idea when selling things a little too hard and saying how people need to be doxxed. It doesn't look good. And it's why Bryan ended up deleting the video that was the topic of my last one. He tried to play the "I'm the persecuted Jew" card and it more than failed. It actually blew up in his face. Someone tried to point out that it was probably just people being trolls, and Lunduke nearly bit his head off. He wasn't being an asshole, he was just stating something that is probably a pretty dead-on observation. Look at poor triggered Bryan's response to it. Don't justify their actions. What they did was pure, disgusting hate, and they should be shunned, and their identity should be made public so everyone can see what evil souls to avoid. First off, Bryan is supposed to be a writer and a reporter. One would think he would know proper English. It would be doesn't justify, not don't justify. But regardless, just look at how he laid on the Shakespearean melodrama on thick in this triggered tweet of his. Then on top of it, he then goes on to say that these people should be doxxed so everyone knows who they are so they can be shunned. That really is some vile shit in its own right. What are you saying in this tweet? Because they triggered him for whatever reason, which I'm not guessing it was with generalized anti-Jewish comments, or any anti-Jewish comments for that matter, these people should have their lives ruined. All because they upset him and made him want to cry like a baby by calling out his shit. Someone seeing what he said, like with how these people should be doxxed, legitimately asked if he was against the freedom to have anonymity, as you can see here. Just look at Bryan's shitbag, avoid the question response. Every single one I've banned is a fake online persona that doesn't seem attached to any real identity, effectively anonymous. Just because he couldn't find identifying personal information associated with these accounts due to people being smart enough to keep their personal lives personal and off the internet. According to him, they are fake accounts. So I guess by his logic, where I don't have anything personal on this account and I'm calling him out, my account must be a fake one too. I mean, that is exactly what he is saying here after all. What he doesn't say, though, is whether or not he's against people having the freedom to remain anonymous. Why would he, after all, when in his previous tweet he made it clear he wasn't? Which is a bit ironic when he's supposed to be such a proponent of Linux and Foss, and personal freedom is at the core of them. Anonymity is a key part of personal freedom, too. If you look here, someone flat out asks him why he is searching for people's real identities and makes a valid point in the process. And then Bryan spurgs out and probably makes one of the stupidest responses he could to it. Why are you searching for real identities, mate? Give me a good enough reason and I'll tell you my name, but remember, the things people say, in jest, can ruin their lives, hence people try to stay anonymous. Bryan's response to this? These people broke the law and were, in general, terrible human beings. They are hiding who they are while hurting people because they are cowards. Clopping capitalists just wanted to know what valid reason Bryan had to be personally searching for these people's identities because of how telling jokes these days can ruin lives. To which he basically admits he is looking for their names and gives a complete and total bullshit reasoning of they broke the law, are hurting people, and are cowards. Considering they broke no laws, their hurting people is clearly completely subjective in this context, as is their being cowards. I think poor Bryan needs to pull his head out of his ass, because the lack of oxygen is taking its toll. When he's trying to dox them because they triggered him, it isn't being a coward protecting yourself from a psycho by trying to remain anonymous. It just isn't. Because in making this video in my last one, I think it would only be prudent of me to worry that Bryan might try to dox me when he is acting like this. It is actually common sense to worry about it when you're looking at everything. When someone tried to disagree with Lunduke on what he said respectfully, while he made valid points, Bryan actually tried to double down. As much as I love you, Bryan, I respectfully disagree. Not cowards, but cunning. They, at least possibly some of them, because I can't know all, are well aware of their moral integrity. They know that, unless they do something that actually hurts someone, they've done no wrong. Here's Bryan's response to that. In this case, they've hurt people. They've done wrong. They are cowards and scum. Kai and Los is right. Unless they physically hurt someone, they have done no wrong. They have caused no actual harm. If Lunduke's mommy taught him about sticks and stones, which I'm guessing she did, he should know that, and I would put money he does. But he's dug himself into a hole here. Because of it, he has had to keep holding on to his narrative for dear life while it is falling apart, hoping his propping it up will work. Kind of hard to do though when you get flat out asked how they have hurt people. Could I ask you how they've hurt people? I mean the anonymous people who make anti-Semitic jokes / comments, and those specifically, if somehow you managed to know who they were? Here's Bryan's response. Are you justifying disgusting, vile, violent threats of death to all Jews? You've argued yourself into a dark, dark place. Nowhere did Bryan Lundiuke justify anti-Semitism in any way, shape, or form, nor did he justify threats being made against Jews. Yet, Lunduke had to try to go there and play that one in order to try to shut him up, asking how they were hurting people. As you can see, Lunduke cannot honestly answer that, and had to resort to trying to claim that Bryan Lundiuke was actually trying to justify supposed threats to Jews, which is pretty desperate low and is fucking god-awful sleazy in my book. Saying death to all Jews may be vile and disgusting, but it is not a threat, as in it being a call to violence. No matter how much one disagrees with it and is disgusted by it, it is still inalienable free speech. Sorry to break that to Brian, but it is. Clapping capitalists try to point out that there is a difference between insulting someone and making a death threat, as you can see here. I'm not sure that's what he meant, Brian. Yes, words can hurt, but insulting someone is on a different level to death threats. Wouldn't you agree? Brian's response to this? These include death threats and other threats of violence. It's part of the same problem. You notice how Brian will not answer a simple question. Could it be that if he did, he might actually destroy his own arguments? That's pretty much what would happen if he did. Not once has Brian shown any proof of threats or violence. We just have to take him at his word because he said so, disabling comments. If there was actual threats of violence made, then why didn't he report them to the proper authorities, as opposed to hiding evidence by disabling comments and then spurging out on Twitter about it? Oh, that's right. I'm gonna say it's because there's no actual threats that were made and law enforcement would just laugh at him for being a moron who is triggered easily by words. Clapping Capitalist cornered Lunduke after this and he still couldn't admit defeat. Just look here. I see death threats, threats of violence, and a different way to insults. Call me an asshole, and I can laugh it off. Insult my nationality or beliefs/religion, I can deal with that. Threaten my life, and that's a different issue altogether. Hurt feelings does not equal fear for safety, in my honest opinion. But Brian was having none of that, as you can see. He just had to keep beating a dead horse that he may have killed by driving it to suicide with his stupid spurging shit. Different, but in some cases, part of the same disease. I think that Clapping Capitalist puts things pretty succinctly in that tweet. He used logic to show that insults and threats are not the same thing. Brian admits they are different, and then like an SJW has to try to pull that retarded butt bullshit and negate that they are different even though he cannot. Why? Because they are not remotely the same thing or related in any way whatsoever. They are not part of the same disease. Jokes and threats against someone do not create the same environment. Jokes make you laugh. Threats make you aware you may need to defend yourself from an assault on your person. Clearly different. As you can see with what Lunduke said in tweet threads, he's definitely got issues. He's in serious need of some mental help if you ask me. Mind you though, I'm not a mental health professional. He deleted his video where he insinuated that a large group of the Linux and Foss community are anti-Semites. He did it due to what appears to be his sponsors tipping him off that I was doing a video on it with my reaching out to them for comment. Yet with the tweet thread that leads to his full-on mental retardation caught on camera, it didn't occur to him to delete it. And it is pretty damning in its own right, as you've seen. Here is a man, a term I am using very loosely, having a meltdown because he was too stupid to properly plan ahead financially for his studio and is feeling the pinch as a result. A man who decided that it would be a good idea to shit on his subscribers by treating them like paychecks and milk them for every penny he can. A man who is being called out for it rightfully so and has been trying to claim criticism is anti-Semitism. People need to know this too. As they should also know that Brian as a person is not how he presents himself. He's made it clear here that he is truly not for the same things that Linux and Foss are built off of, such as things like actual freedom. I made this video so they will hopefully know these things. If you liked this video, depending on where you are watching it, please give it an upvote or thumbs up. If you want to know when new content of mine hits the internet, don't forget to subscribe to one or more of my social media or video accounts listed here. Also, with YouTube, don't forget to ring that bell. You can find all of my video content on both BitChute and YouTube. This may not be the case with other places I upload to, but I will try to minimize this happening. You are always welcome to interact with me at any of these sites on the list, so feel free to do so. If you have anything you want me to cover in a video, when it comes to news or current events, send it right along to me. I will try to do my best to cover it. As always, thank you for watching.